I remember back at around 2016-17 timeframe when Nat Ford, who at the time was chair of APTA, the American Public Transportation Association, he was also, as he is today, CEO of Jacksonville Transit Authority, kind of led our industry to change the definition of what public transit agencies were about. And the way I interpreted what he told to us, because I was CEO of the MTA in Baltimore at the time and was on the board of APTA, was he said we need to change the way we view ourselves as no longer do we have a monopoly on provision of transit services in a city. Now we are the aggregators of mobility services in a city. And little by little, transit agencies across the country adopted that approach until today, nearly everyone has moved in that direction and now see themselves as, yes, we're providing bus and fixed route transit and rail, but we're also embracing TNCs and taxi cab companies and others to help us provide more mobility in a city. I'm Paul Comfort, and this is Transit Unplugged, the world's leading public transportation executive podcast. On today's episode, we're going to dive into that even more and talk about the use of TNCs like Uber, Lyft, and others like Userve and Silverride and taxi cab companies and others in the use of expanding public transportation, expanding the reach of public transit, serving new rider segments, enhancing equitable transportation, and ensuring continuity during disruptions. Today's episode is the first ever in 7 years that is sponsored by someone in addition to Modaxo, our parent company. This episode is sponsored by Uber Transit, and they recently published a study called Transit Horizons 2.0, The Mobility Evolution. And this podcast is going to be talking to 3 public transit agencies who are using TNCs to expand the reach of their public transit service and their mobility service in the city. Robert Betts is the Director of Operations and Service Development with Marin Transit in Marin County, California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. He has over 20 years of experience in the transit industry, and he joined Marin Transit 14 years ago after starting his career in transportation consulting. He'll join us, as does Carlos Cruz Casas. Carlos is the Chief Innovation Officer at Miami-Dade County in Florida County Department of Transportation and Public Works. His primary focus is to introduce mobility innovation and plan for a fully integrated transit system. And we also have with us Bonnie Epstein. Bonnie works at PSTA, Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority. She started there in 2015 in the planning department. And 2020, she became Director of Mobility Services, and they manage the paratransit program, the Transportation Disadvantage program, and their Mobility on Demand programs. And over the last 3 years, ridership on their Mobility on Demand program has expanded, and now 2/3 of all paratransit trips are taken on demand, saving PSTA over $20,000 each month. This is an amazing program, a great look in depth into what's happening in using third-party contractors, TNCs, and expanding the reach of public mobility. All on this episode of Transit Unplugged. Now let's join the conversation with these 3 great transit leaders. Great to have with us today some amazing guests. We're going to be talking about really one of the hottest trends happening in the last few years overall, not just here in America, but over the whole world, and that is the role of third-party contractors, TNCs like Uber and Lyft, and other companies who are interested in helping public transit agencies provide mobility to their passengers. And our guest with us today, excited to have with us, is one of them is a good friend of mine, actually, Carlos Cruz Casas, who is with us from Miami-Dade. Carlos, welcome, my friend.
Yeah, good morning. How are you guys?
Also, Bonnie Epstein from one of the pioneering agencies in America when it comes to using TNCs like Uber. Bonnie, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and talk about transit with all of you.
And then Robert Betts from Marin Transit. Robert, thanks for being with us today, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Where is Marin, Robert?
Marin County is on the north end of the Golden Gate Bridge in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we're right across the bay from San Francisco.
So you're one of those 26 agencies that have public transportation around the Bay Area?
Correct. One of many.
Yeah. So tell me some about your on-demand transportation services there and how it works.
Yeah. So our current program, which we call Catch a Ride, similar to a lot of voucher-based subsidy models that many transit agencies have. We currently work with Uber, Lyft, local taxi providers to offer discounted rides for our eligible residents. I think what makes it a little bit unique is we really focus the program on older adults and those with disabilities, specifically here in Marin County.
So Catch a Ride, how long has that program been like a program?
Catch a Ride started actually back in 2010, but it's gone through many different iterations. It started as a traditional voucher-based program just with the taxi operators. We actually incorporated a microtransit element into that program in 2018. And then most recently, actually during the pandemic, we expanded that program to include our TNC partners.
Okay, that's great. And Bonnie, tell us about your program there, how it got started in Pinellas County, Suncoast Transit in near the Tampa Bay, Clearwater area, south of Tampa Bay, where you're at there. Tell us about your program some.
Yeah, so our TD late shift program, we started that in August of 2016, shortly after we started our first last mile pilot program, Direct Connect. And really, the TD late shift program helps low income riders get to or from work overnight between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. when our buses aren't running. We know that many of our riders use the bus. We really wanted to make sure that riders who use our service and have a second or third shift job could still rely on PSTA. To join our program, riders need to qualify for our transportation disadvantaged program and then just show proof of a job between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And once approved, the riders can take up to 25 trips per month on the provider of their choice, Uber, Lyft, local taxi, or local wheelchair, and only pay $20 for the monthly bus pass and the late shift service.
And how's that paid for, Bonnie?
So right now, we've been using state funding for that service, a grant that we started getting in 2016 through this Commission for Transportation Disadvantage. It's a Florida state program as the main, we're paying for the service.
Yeah. One more question, too. Take us back to, if you don't mind, I remember seeing, I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 10 years ago, I don't know, when you were like the first ones in the country, right, Brett? He hired Uber to help out like last mile or first mile. And tell us about that, because that was, at the time, groundbreaking, and now pretty much everybody's doing it.
Yeah, both the late shift program and our Direct Connect program that I mentioned before were one of the first partnerships between a transit agency and Uber. And, really back then we were trying to figure things out as we went, between data sharing, contracting, how we were going to do payments. It was really just, we'll do our best and figure it out. It's been really exciting to see how much, not just our partnerships and programs with Uber have grown, but now there's a whole division at Uber, contract bases, a whole set way of doing things. And, transit systems now can just, learn from what we've done. And, there's, 50, 60 agencies now working with TNCs that, just started from back in 2016, our one little partnership.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to call out Brad Miller because he really was a pioneer and stepped out when other folks hadn't done this. And he saw the value of the service it was providing the customers and also the economy and efficiency, Carlos, to the agency. Do you all see that in Miami as well? Tell us about your program.
Certainly. Paul, and I feel that we are in our comfort zone here, right? We'll be able to talk to my friends. But I remember 2018 when we reached out to PSTA about their program and how we can learn about it. That was the time that we're actually looking into introducing on-demand transit. And this is a different flavor of what kind of goes through. But our programs have led to where we are today. So we have done several partnerships with TNCs, Ubers and Lyft and taxis, as you can imagine. But we have right now one that has been very close and near to my heart because is to support what all the agencies are looking to do right now is to change our bus networks to actually meet the demand of today's days, right? So last November, we changed our entire bus network. We did what everyone thought impossible, right? Miami-Dade County, a large environment, over 900 buses, 99 bus routes, changing overnight. We were to do so, and the way we did is actually to put buses where buses belong and actually increase the number of frequent corridors running every 15 minutes or less, and some routes every 7.5 minutes or less. We reduce our footprint, we simplify our network. However, the service area was increased because we introduced and augmented our on-demand transit program. So now have better service. However, there was still some areas in Miami-Dade County that were left behind. right? And it's not a moment for us to actually use transit in a way that leave people behind. So what we did is actually trying to engage with the community, listen to those concerns. And within a couple of weeks, we're able to launch what we believe it was a very reactive and appropriate program. It's called the Better Bus Network Solutions Program with Uber, in which we actually brought back service along some of those corridors that were left behind in the implementation of the Better Bus Network, and some of the corridors that were actually introduced with the on-demand transit, where people are still learning the system. We threw in the voucher program. By now, by the month of August, we have served more than 85,000 trips, in these corridors alone, right? So we start seeing the need, and that has helped us not only to first understand that this is a great value, 85,000 trips, Paul, with an average cost of about $9 per trip. And these are not areas that, high frequency buses go through. These are areas that before were low productivity bus routes, costing us $45 per passenger, $55 for passengers. So it's very effective for us to do so. And now also it gives us a lot of insights, what we need to do now. Can we now introduce several changes to our bus routes? Now through this effort, we're able to say, okay, this doesn't qualify for a big bus route, but have been able to introduce what we call a fixed route light. We now introduce a new program called MetroLink, and it's a service with a 15-passenger van that runs along some of these corridors, right? So this iteration and providing solutions for folks that need to get places, but at the same time, learnings from our planners to actually provide a better service has been cost-effective and illuminating the fact that from now, it is changing the way that we think about transit as a whole.
And as you guys know, I'm executive director of the North American Transit Alliance, which is the big contractors like Transdev and Keolis, National Express, which now, by the way, is called We Drive You, and RATP Dev and MV Transportation. So all of us coming together in one big community to provide better service for the end customer. That's what it's all about, right, Robert? Isn't it really about, like Stephen Covey said in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it's all about beginning with the end in mind. And the end we have in mind is service to people, providing them access to all of life's opportunities. And if we can do it in a cost-efficient way by using third-party contractors who may be able to provide it a little cheaper and also have maybe even better customer service stats, that's pretty cool. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, we're a contract provider for all of our services, whether it's our fixed route, our demand response. We actually have contracts for yellow school bus service here in Marin County. So we've always relied on our partners to help us deliver services. I do think that even during the pandemic, when we felt the pinch of driver shortages and other cost escalations, we had to look beyond our current resources. And that's really where we made the pivot to start to work with Uber and Lyft and take advantage of those other mobility resources right here in our community.
Carlos, have you seen the same thing there too? Do you feel like it's a cost-effective solution?
The thing is that we are now, and I love how the theme of this conversation is about extending the reach of transit, right? And that can mean a lot of things, right? There's nothing that can compete with a well-run fixed route service that is frequently carry a lot of passengers, right? So we had conversations, we have a bus route in Miami-Dade County that carry more than 20,000 passengers a day, right? And that is more than the tri-rail commuter rail on the 3 counties in South Florida, right?
Wow.
Is a bus route. Imagine that, right? So that is an effective bus route,
yes.
Right? In order for us to continue to grow those areas, we need to dedicate the resources. The resources are finite, right? We don't have an extensive number of buses out there. So what we see it is more cost effective for us to reallocate resources from other low productivity bus routes into these bus routes, make this more efficient, and also to use other, third parties, innovative approaches to actually provide service in other areas, and all of a sudden seeing the benefit. And I see that because not only the costs have come down, right? If you think about it, for that particular trip, the cost came down. But now, because I put more resources, the ridership has gone up on the regular bus service, right? There's no better marketing than frequency for buses, right?
That's right.
We have seen, I'm thrilled about this, right? We have seen through the Better Bus Network more than 12% ridership increase on a weekday, just in the changes. Right. And this is, again, to the tune of by reallocating our resources in a cost neutral manner, seeing that And we were able to do so. And I think there is a lot of conversation about, transit deserts, right? And remember those days, Paul, when we were talking about transit deserts,
right.
It was like, that's just, we don't talk about transit desert. That was back in the day. Now is, you know what? It's okay to have a transit desert as long as not a mobility desert. And I think this is where all these things kind of come through and allow us to actually be more efficient with the resources that we have.
Yeah. Bonnie, that's what you guys are doing there, right? I mean, so you may have a few people that need rides in various areas at night, their late night shifts or whatever. It's not enough people to justify a 40-foot bus to run a full route. But instead, you've got the opportunity to have Uber and Lyft drivers and other people that are already out there suddenly picking people up and taking them where they want to go.
Yeah, I call that leveraging the existing capacity of the network that's already out there. And I love that we can take advantage of that and provide service overnight where we wouldn't really be able to otherwise. Whenever we do rider surveys, one of the top concerns we always hear about is span. Pinellas County has a lot of tourism. I'm sorry, Carlos, but we have America's #1 beach, according to Clearwater Beach.
It
is a great beach, Bonnie. I've been there.
It is a great beach,
awesome
yes.
There. Yeah.
We got a lot of great beaches here. I know Miami does too. But, a lot of our riders don't work their traditional 9 to 5 service hours. And, we were one of the most underfunded transit systems in the country. And so we can't provide that level of service that we like to, even during the day, let alone overnight. So we really need to get creative and figure out how can we still provide service to these riders and it will still be cost efficient. So I did a little analysis recently and, to run our core route network overnight, that's about 8 or 9 routes once an hour. So between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., it would cost us about $6.5 million annually. And to run the late shift program, we're spending under $400,000 a year and really giving the riders that need it the most the service that they need.
Yeah.
The cost per trip is pretty low, $16, $17 a trip. We wouldn't be able to provide this service without partners like Uber.
And it's phenomenal to see it that way too, because again, our communities are very dynamic and not every day is the same. Even not every Wednesday is the same. Right. So by having opportunity and not having the dedicated in those particular times, the day that you don't have that large amount of people going the same direction at the same time, the on-demand component gives you the flexibility to just serve what needs to be served and not basically and be able to get those resources and apply somewhere else.
Yeah. Robert, tell us about that there in Marin. Tell us about the demographics there and some of the top priorities of your riders.
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple areas that Marin County consistently, not only in the state of California, but nationally, ranks #1 and #2. One of those is life expectancy. Our residents' average life expectancy is over 85 years old.
Wow.
And, we project that 1 in 3 residents here in our county will be over the age of 60 by 2030. And that's right around the corner. So that goes into a lot of the planning work that we do to make sure that our mobility services are really geared toward the future needs of our residents. What we're starting to see now is those residents are staying in their homes. Really, we're defined more now by a healthy, active, aging community than we are as a suburban bedroom community. We do have pockets of poverty. We have mobility challenges. A lot of our residents may be house rich, but cash poor. And so that's really where we focus our resources to help support those residents.
And you told me a funny little story. I thought that kind of showcases the personal nature of the mobility that we're providing to people. Tell us about that story, about the photos that were sent to you all.
Yeah. So one of the benefits in bringing on our TNC partners was expanding our service area. So our existing programs that whether it was agency operated microtransit or paratransit, they have very defined service area boundaries. The TNC program really opened up that service area. And one of our early adopters, who I think was a little skeptical of the program, as soon as she enrolled in the program and started to use the vouchers, we started to get these selfies of her enjoying the recreational lands here in Marin County. So it was a nice email that we could pass around to all staff, and it just kind of showcased some of the expanded mobility we were offering.
Yeah. Don't you guys have like the big redwoods out there?
We do. So we're home to Muir Woods. So
yeah, I've been there. That's
visitors.
Amazing.
Yeah. We do run the Muirwood Shuttle in partnership with the national parks out there. So you can also take that service if you're here in Marin.
Yeah, I got to tell people who are listening, if you've never seen these redwoods, there's like nothing like them on earth. I mean, you're just in awe when you stand there. It is like one of those moments where you're really communing with nature. You've got some great things out there, Robert.
I agree.
Yep. Bonnie, has anything ever funny like that happened with you and your operations?
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about with our late shift services, when we first started it, we thought, okay, we've got to make sure we have enough money because once people join, they're gonna be on the program for forever. But one of the things that we learned is that riders, when they're looking for a job, sometimes the job that they can get is that overnight shift, and they want to get their foot in the door. So you may take a shift that's overnight at Taco Bell or McDonald's, but over time, you don't need that anymore. You get put on the day shift. Or like we've heard from a couple riders, they make enough money now that they don't need the program. They're able to save up and buy a car or move, into a new home where they're closer to a bus route or something. And, that was something that we didn't really think that we'd hear, that riders can, use the program for the amount of time that they need. And it just really helps them in that, most time of need. But then they can either get the day shift or earn enough to get a car. They don't need us anymore. And that opens up the program for new people, and they can just sort of cycle through and use it when they need it.
Carlos, it sounds to me like, kind of in summarizing what we're hearing today, maybe you can help wrap us up, that when public transit agencies are looking for solutions, they want to extend the reach of their public transit. So there might be gaps, right, that we talked about. They don't want there to be mobility gaps. So using a third-party contractor like an Uber or other companies can help close that gap. It can also help new rider segments that Bonnie was talking about, where you've got late-night workers and others who are on non-traditional shifts where maybe we don't have frequent bus service, that, we don't want them standing outside the hospital for an hour, while they wait for the next bus. So this gives them an opportunity to have that. It also enhances equitable transportation. So there's senior and communities that Robert was talking about that maybe would not have access to this type of service that now do. And then also, we haven't talked about it a lot, but I've seen it used also in ensuring continuity during disruptions, that these third-party contractors like an Uber can be an option. These cars are already out there, and they're just like extending the network opportunities, the mobility opportunities of a transit agency. What say you?
I think that's phenomenal, right? That's exactly what it is, right? It is actually being part of the transit network, right? So we talk about extending the reach of transit. To me, is redefining how we provide transit. And to your point, is providing that trip, right? And I say to all that is how all this thing kind of fit together. Ultimately, our role is to provide public transportation in a sense that can people have access to opportunities. And now we have in our tool belt, right, a lot more tools to use, not only bus and rail, but bus and rail and on-demand transit and TNC, right? And all these things are coming together. Like shortly, in a couple of weeks, we're going to start seeing how we're going to start dispatching Uber trips through our Metro Connect program, which is our on-demand transit program. So not only that, we have several voucher programs, but now enriching the experience of someone using on-demand transit programs to get to where they need to go. And to Bonnie's point of view too, is now we can actually have a different span of service that can be a more adaptive, right? So we maintain our fleets, up to 8 p.m., but people go for dinner and they don't want to go back home at 8 o'clock. So this is where, this dispatch trip to an Uber can take you back home a little later, right? So it is not only providing the access to places out there, but allowing you to live the life that you want to be, right? Using the service that a transit agency like Miami-Dade County, Pinellas County, and Marin County can actually provide for their residents.
Well, you've got great leadership there at your agency, Carlos. Not only were you there, but also with my good friend Ulois Cleckley, and also your chief operating officer who used to work with me in Baltimore, Sean Adgerson. So you've got a great leadership team there, and good commitment to all things exciting there. I mean, we just had Ulois on the show recently talking about your brand new, we don't have time to talk about it today, but your brand new battery electric bus garage that's coming, that's going to house, these massive 60-foot buses that are coming your way. Just exciting times down there in Miami. And Bonnie, with your group, congratulations, a pioneer still leading the way. And Robert, making sure that one of the wealthiest counties in America is providing the service that their citizens deserve. Congratulations to all of you on using all the assets that are at your disposal to provide amazing mobility. And thank you for sharing your stories today.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is an awesome conversation.
Thanks, Paul.
All right,
Love it.
Carlos. I'll see you down there soon.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Transit Unplugged. Hi, I'm Tris Hussey, editor of the podcast, and I'd like to thank our guests, Carlos Cruz Casas, Bonnie Epstein, and Robert Betts, for their time to appear on the show. We'd also like to thank Uber Transit, the sponsor of this episode. Uber Transit recently published Transit Horizons 2.0, The Mobility Evolution, an industry perspective paper exploring how public-private partnerships can and have enhanced public transportation. It's available for download at uber.com/Transit Horizons. You can also find the link in the show notes. Next week on the show, we head to Boston to hear from Ryan Coholan, COO of the MBTA, and learn about how Boston is leveling up its entire network from buses to commuter rail to ferries. Plus, you have to hear about Ryan's commute into work. We're pretty sure this is the most unique commute you'll come across in transit. Transit Unplugged is brought to you by Modaxo. At Modaxo, we're passionate about moving the world's people, and at Transit Unplugged, we're passionate about telling those stories. So until next week, ride safe and ride happy.